What if I told you that scarcity is not just an economic problem, but the sharpest blade of power itself? The question we solve today is this: how do rulers and leaders use scarcity to command obedience, and how can you avoid being trapped by it? Scarcity is the oldest trick in the game of power. Men do not move for abundance breeds laziness and entitlement. They move for hunger, for fear of loss, for the desperate belief that tomorrow may starve them. He who controls scarcity controls the pulse of society. Scarcity is a weapon of control. Scarcity is not merely the absence of supply. It is the sharpest instrument in the arsenal of power. When men believe that what they desire is limited, their reason bends, their judgment weakens, and their loyalty becomes cheap to purchase. To command resources is not enough. True mastery lies in the ability to dictate how men perceive those resources. If they believe that bread is rare, they will kneel for crumbs. If they believe opportunities are scarce, they will fight to exhaustion just for a seat at the table. Scarcity does not simply reduce choice. It creates the illusion that one must obey or perish. That illusion is the foundation of control. The greatest rulers have never been those who handed out abundance freely. Abundance breeds arrogance, ingratitude, and rebellion, for when men are satisfied, they imagine they no longer need their masters. But scarcity keeps them tethered, eyes fixed on the hand that doles out survival. When a ruler withholds, he transforms himself from a man into a lifeline, and men do not betray the hand that appears to preserve their existence. He who commands scarcity commands fear, and fear bends more spines than generosity ever will. Observe how the marketplace teaches this truth. A merchant who floods the stalls with cloth lowers his own power, for his wares become common. But the merchant who releases little, who convinces buyers that his fabric is rare, elevates his goods to treasure. What sells is not the cloth, but the perception of scarcity. Men bid against each other not because they need the item, but because they cannot endure the thought of losing it. This same logic scales from the petty trader to the throne of kingdoms. The fewer the paths to survival, the greater the authority of the one who controls them. Scarcity also breeds obedience in a way no soldier can. To control food, money, or opportunity is to place invisible chains upon the masses. A ruler can command legions, but it is the hunger in men's stomachs that makes those legions move without question. Men may resist a command shouted from the mouth of authority, but they do not resist the emptiness that gnaws inside them. Scarcity makes men police themselves, betraying neighbor for neighbor, turning brother against brother, all for the hope of scraps. No force of arms could ever achieve the same submission at so little cost. A cunning ruler understands that scarcity does not need to be natural. Famines, shortages, and limitations are easily manufactured when patience and strategy are employed. Bread may rot in warehouses while the streets clamor for food. Water may be diverted even as rivers flow freely. The people need not know the truth. All they must see is that supply is uncertain, and thus the hand that restores, it becomes a savior. In reality, the savior is the very architect of their desperation. The ruler is not simply feeding them, he is feeding upon their dependence. Even beyond resources, scarcity governs affection, loyalty, and privilege. The man who gives freely of himself loses respect. The man who withholds becomes coveted. Power lies not in the generosity of the gift, but in the ability to deny. Soldiers respect a leader who rarely bestows honors, for then each reward is priceless. Subjects admire a ruler who rarely shows mercy, for then each act of pardon seems divine. Scarcity in acknowledgement, scarcity in privilege, scarcity in access. These become currencies more valuable than gold. It is not only the present that scarcity controls, but the future. When men believe that tomorrow holds less than today, they scramble to secure what they can in the moment. They sell their freedom, their loyalty, even their dignity for the promise of survival. They think not of justice, not of rebellion, not of questioning authority. They think only of the next meal, the next coin, the next opportunity. In this way, scarcity narrows vision and makes men incapable of imagining alternatives. A people who cannot imagine abundance will never demand it. They will only demand that their chains be loosened slightly, never broken. Scarcity, therefore, is not simply a condition of life but a deliberate tool. A ruler who understands its power does not fear the discontent of his subjects, for their desperation makes them predictable. He need only open or close the flow of resources to direct their actions. It is not their love he requires, nor their admiration, but their dependency. To control what men believe is rare is to control how they live, how they think, and how they bow. Artificial scarcity creates obedience. Scarcity is a natural condition of life, but the true genius of power lies in the art of manufacturing it. Nature herself provides famines, droughts, and wars to reduce supply and humble men, yet the ruler who waits for nature to act is a fool. It is far more effective to create scarcity at will, to orchestrate the illusion that resources, privileges, and freedoms are limited, even when they are abundant. By this artifice, obedience is extracted not through force but through perception. For men who believe they are competing for survival willingly chain themselves to the one who controls the prize. Artificial scarcity thrives because men are easily deceived by appearances. If a ruler opens his granaries wide, the people will eat, grow bold, and forget the hand that sustains them. But if he withholds, if he releases in measured portions, he transforms abundance into dependence. Bread may be plentiful, yet the crowd does not know it. They see only what is given, and thus they beg. The secret of power lies not in how much one possesses, but in how much one allows others to believe exists. To master appearances is to master obedience. This principle governs not only material resources, but every sphere of human life. Consider opportunity. A throne may be surrounded by countless offices and titles, yet a shrewd ruler dispenses them sparingly. If every soldier is promoted, none feel honor. If every servant is rewarded, none remain loyal. But if only a few are chosen, the rest will labor endlessly, hoping to be among the scarce elect. Artificial scarcity transforms ordinary recognition into a coveted treasure, one that men will exhaust themselves to obtain. It is not the worth of the title, but the rarity of its distribution that commands their devotion. Artificial scarcity also fuels rivalry, and rivalry breeds control. When men believe that resources are limited, they turn against one another rather than against the ruler. A court divided by competition for rare honors is too distracted to conspire. A people who quarrel for scarce bread are too exhausted to revolt. The ruler has no need to suppress them by violence, for they suppress themselves through rivalry. Each believes that if he does not grasp quickly, another will seize what little remains. This desperation ensures obedience, for no man risks defiance when he fears losing even the smallest portion of survival. Even freedom itself can be rationed. If liberty is given fully, men grow reckless, they forget gratitude and begin to demand more. But if liberty is scarce, permitted only in fragments, granted only to those deemed loyal, it becomes more precious than life itself. Men will conform, flatter, and abase themselves merely for the illusion of a slight release from constraint. By withholding, the ruler makes obedience the price of freedom. The people do not realize they are in chains. They believe they are privileged to enjoy even a brief slackening of them. The brilliance of artificial scarcity lies in its invisibility. Men rarely suspect that their hunger, their striving, their rivalries are manufactured. They assume scarcity is natural, unavoidable, the decree of fate. They curse each other for possessing what they lack, but seldom question the architect of their desperation. A ruler can starve his people while feasting in secret, and they will still kneel for his charity when he tosses them scraps. Their obedience is born not of loyalty but of necessity, and necessity is the most durable form of submission. Artificial scarcity also preserves the aura of value. Gold itself is only metal, its worth lies in its rarity. In the same way, commands lose weight when they are constant, favors become cheap when they are common, affection turns ordinary when it is freely given. To ration them is to transform them into treasures. A ruler's silence becomes more feared than another man's speech, his glance more valued than another's embrace, his coin more prized than another's wealth. The fewer the gestures, the greater their weight. By this economy of scarcity, obedience is purchased at the highest price with the lowest cost. Scarcity is most effective when it is uncertain. If men believe that supply will always be low, They may resign themselves to misery. But if scarcity is unpredictable, if today there is abundance and tomorrow drought, then obedience becomes frantic. Men cling closer to authority, unsure of when the next portion will arrive. This rhythm of giving and withholding sharpens dependence, for the people learn to see stability not in themselves, but in the one who decides the timing of their relief. Uncertainty keeps them vigilant, and vigilance binds them more tightly than chains. Artificial scarcity thus transforms power from a burden into an art. The ruler need not exhaust his armies or squander his wealth. He need only ration appearances. He is not judged by what he possesses, but by what he allows others to believe they can lose. Men become obedient not because they respect him, but because they cannot imagine survival without him. Scarcity breeds conflict. Scarcity is not merely a state of limitation. It is a furnace that forges conflict among men. When resources appear insufficient, alliances crack, friendships dissolve, and blood relations mean nothing before the primal urge to survive. It is in scarcity that the true nature of men is revealed, for abundance hides their desperation, while scarcity exposes it with ruthless clarity. A ruler who understands this truth does not fear scarcity but harnesses it, for conflict among subjects is the surest guard of his own authority. Consider how men behave when food is plentiful. They converse, trade, and boast of honor. They speak of principles, justice, and fairness, for they can afford such luxuries when their bellies are full. Yet when bread is lacking, all these noble ideas evaporate. They cease to debate ideals and begin to calculate how to seize the next crust. Neighbors who once shared laughter now watch each other with suspicion. Brothers who once embraced turn to silent rivalry. Scarcity ignites competition that no decree of peace can extinguish. The ruler who recognizes this does not strive to eliminate conflict, but to channel it. He knows that when men fight among themselves, they cannot unite against him. A divided populace becomes absorbed in their private wars, forgetting the throne that presides above them. Each man seeks to guard what little he has, fearing that others will strip it from him. This fear becomes a leash more secure than any chain. When men distrust each other, their obedience to authority becomes the only certainty in their lives. Scarcity not only breeds conflict between individuals, but also between groups. When resources are said to be insufficient, communities fracture along lines of tribe, class, or faction. Each blames the other for hoarding or stealing what little remains. Resentments that were once dormant now sharpen into hatred. The wealthy are despised for having too much. The poor are envied for their desperate cunning. And foreigners are accused of stealing from the soil itself. Such divisions weaken the bonds of unity, and in their weakness lies the strength of the ruler. For a people too consumed with fighting one another will never find the will to fight their master. The battlefield of scarcity is not always physical. It is waged in whispers, in deceit, in calculated betrayals. A man who once trusted his ally begins to suspect that alliance itself is dangerous, for loyalty cannot feed the stomach. Thus he betrays before being betrayed, strikes before being struck. This cycle of suspicion poisons every bond, until only the ruler remains as the central figure, untouched by their mistrust. While they watch one another, he watches them all. While they devour each other, he feasts upon their obedience. Conflict born of scarcity also ensures hierarchy. In abundance, men begin to believe they are equals. They grow bold, demanding recognition, imagining themselves capable of self-rule. But scarcity reminds them of their place. The one who secures bread becomes master. The one who fails becomes servant. Scarcity divides society into victors and victims, rulers and ruled, commanders and commanded. This division becomes permanent, for once a man has bowed in desperation, he rarely rises again. It must also be seen that scarcity creates a peculiar form of loyalty. Men may despise the ruler who rations their food, yet they despise even more the neighbor who competes with them for it. Their hatred for one another surpasses their hatred for power, and so they cling to authority as the only force that prevents total chaos. Even tyranny appears preferable to unrestrained conflict, for at least tyranny provides a measure of order. Thus the ruler becomes both the cause of scarcity and the cure for the violence it unleashes. History itself testifies to this truth. Empires have collapsed not because of external invasion, but because scarcity turned citizens against each other. Civil wars have ignited not from abundance, but from the desperate conviction that resources were too few to be shared. Famine has toppled dynasties, not simply through hunger but through the conflicts that hunger provokes. Every struggle for power is at its root a struggle for scarce resources: land, wealth, authority, recognition. Scarcity is the spark, conflict is the flame. The cunning ruler, therefore, does not waste effort attempting to remove scarcity. He recognizes that scarcity is inevitable, whether natural or manufactured. His task is to direct the conflict it produces. He ensures that the people fight each other for food, rather than fight him for justice, that nobles quarrel for privilege, rather than unite against the throne, that soldiers compete for promotion rather than plot rebellion. Conflict is not extinguished but controlled, and through control the ruler secures his reign. Scarcity exposes weakness. Scarcity is not merely a condition that tests men, it is the mirror that strips away illusions and reveals their true fragility. In times of plenty, weakness can be concealed beneath the mask of abundance. A man may seem prosperous when resources are flowing. A ruler may appear competent when the treasury is full, and a nation may seem strong when trade is flourishing. Yet when scarcity arrives, all disguises are torn away. The pretense of strength collapses, and what remains is the naked truth of who is prepared and who is not. Men often deceive themselves into believing that their stability rests upon their own merit, when in truth it rests upon circumstance. The merchant boasts of his wisdom while markets are overflowing. The general claims genius while supplies are secure, and the ruler presents himself as favored by fortune when the harvest is rich. But the moment scarcity strikes, wisdom, genius, and favor vanish like smoke. The merchant's wealth evaporates when goods cannot be obtained. The general's army withers when rations fail, and the ruler's supposed fortune is cursed by the very people who once praised it. Scarcity unmasks the weakness that prosperity once concealed. In individuals, scarcity separates the disciplined from the indulgent. A man who has squandered his strength in days of ease will collapse the fastest when resources grow thin. He who lived in constant preparation endures, while he who trusted in perpetual abundance begs for mercy. The weak cry out against the injustice of fate, but their suffering is not fate's cruelty. It is the revelation of their failure to prepare. Scarcity punishes not by creating weakness but by exposing it. The same holds true for rulers. A throne may appear secure while coffers are full, but when famine strikes or silver runs dry, the ruler who has not secured reserves is exposed as a pretender. Subjects who once admired his wealth now see only his incompetence. Rivals who once seemed powerless seize the chance to rise, for nothing invites rebellion faster than a ruler who cannot provide even the illusion of security. Scarcity tests authority. An authority that collapses under its weight is revealed to have been hollow all along. Nations too are unmasked by scarcity. In times of plenty, their armies march proudly, their people boast of culture, their leaders speak of destiny. Yet let scarcity of food, resources, or trade strike, and the facade crumbles. A people who appeared unified descend into division, an army once disciplined mutinies for rations, and leaders who once spoke with confidence stammer excuses. Scarcity does not invent their weakness. It reveals that their unity was fragile, their discipline shallow, and their destiny an illusion. It is also true that scarcity unmasks loyalty. When goods are abundant, allies and friends gather like flies to sweetness. They praise, they flatter, they claim devotion. Yet when scarcity enters, they vanish, or worse. They turn against those they once swore to serve. A ruler surrounded by allies in times of prosperity soon learns in scarcity which allies were loyal and which were parasites. Scarcity is the crucible in which false devotion burns away, leaving only those bonds that can withstand deprivation. Thus it exposes not only personal weakness, but the weakness of relationships and alliances. Scarcity further reveals the strength or fragility of order. Laws may be respected in abundance, not because men are virtuous, but because they have no need to break them. When scarcity rises, men care little for laws, for hunger and fear outweigh morality. The weak ruler believes law alone binds men, The wise ruler knows that law is only respected when resources are secure. When scarcity strips this security away, order collapses unless it is upheld by true strength. Thus, scarcity uncovers whether law was built upon fear of punishment or merely upon the comfort of abundance. Even in the private soul, scarcity exposes weakness. A man may speak of patience, humility, and moderation when his table is full, but when hunger gnaws, his virtues vanish. He curses, he betrays, he steals. Scarcity reveals that his morality was not conviction but convenience. The strong, by contrast, endure deprivation with control, proving that their discipline is not a mask but a reality. In this way, scarcity distinguishes between the actor and the true character, between the pretender and the man of substance. For this reason, scarcity is feared, for it cannot be deceived. Abundance can be purchased, abundance can be displayed, abundance can be faked by borrowing or plundering. But scarcity strips away such illusions. It cannot be bribed, it cannot be postponed, it cannot be tricked. It stands as the ultimate test, and through it weakness is dragged into the light. Those who fall are those who relied on appearance rather than preparation, on fortune rather than foresight, on indulgence rather than discipline. Scarcity is never neutral. Scarcity is never an impartial force that passes through the lives of men without consequence. It is always a weapon, always a divider, always a force that determines who commands and who obeys. To believe that scarcity is a natural accident, untouched by power, is to misunderstand its essence. Scarcity is never neutral because it always produces winners and losers, masters and servants, rulers and subjects. Where scarcity exists, some will rise by controlling it, while others will be broken beneath its weight. Every instance of scarcity reveals a struggle for dominance. When food runs short, it is not the hunger itself that determines fate, but the question of who distributes bread. When wealth dries up, the currency of survival is not found in the empty markets, but in the hands of those who decide who may access what remains. Scarcity thus becomes a tool, for the strong understand that by holding the keys to survival, they gain power greater than any army or treasury. The one who provides is obeyed, not because he is loved, but because he alone holds the gate between life and death. Scarcity is never neutral because men do not experience it equally. The poor always feel its sting first, while the rich find ways to cushion themselves. This difference is no accident but a deliberate arrangement, for the wealthy use scarcity to entrench their position. When resources are low, they raise prices, hoard supplies, and watch as the desperate masses weaken each other in struggle. They lose nothing, in fact, they gain. Scarcity concentrates wealth and amplifies inequality. Those already high ascend higher, those already low sink deeper. Thus it functions as a force that cements hierarchy rather than challenges it. The cunning ruler sees scarcity as an opportunity to reorganize power. If he permits it to ravage his people without control, chaos ensues and his throne is endangered. But if he manipulates it, if he determines when and how scarcity strikes, he wields it as a weapon. By rationing food, he makes obedience the price of survival. By restricting freedoms, he makes loyalty the path to privilege. By limiting opportunities, he ensures that men compete not with him, but with one another. Scarcity in his hands is never neutral. It is an instrument sharpened to keep subjects divided, dependent, and docile. At the same time, scarcity punishes the weak ruler who fails to command it. When famine arrives and he has no reserves, when war depletes and he has no strategy, when economy collapses and he has no foresight, scarcity becomes a destroyer rather than a servant. It does not merely harm his people, it exposes his impotence. Rivals rise to fill the void, subjects turn their loyalty elsewhere, and the throne that once seemed secure collapses under the weight of unmet needs. Scarcity in this sense is merciless. It rewards the strong with obedience and condemns the weak with ruin. Scarcity also shapes perception, and perception itself is power. A resource does not need to be truly rare to wield influence. It only needs to be believed rare. A ruler who spreads the idea that grain is dwindling makes men grateful for every ration he provides, even if warehouses overflow in secret. The merchant who whispers that his goods are nearly gone makes buyers desperate to secure them. Scarcity is never neutral because belief itself transforms it into reality. Men act not according to what exists, but according to what they perceive, and thus the appearance of scarcity is as potent as scarcity itself. Conflict, loyalty, and hierarchy are all born from the unequal grip of scarcity. It directs human energy toward competition and away from unity. Men who might otherwise stand together against tyranny instead tear each other apart for scraps. Workers who might demand justice instead labor longer for the chance at scarce rewards. Soldiers who might plot rebellion instead fight one another for promotions. Scarcity divides, and in dividing, it always strengthens one side while weakening another. There is no neutrality in division. Even in matters beyond survival, scarcity molds power. Affection, recognition, honor. These too become scarce by design. A ruler who praises sparingly makes his subjects crave his approval. A commander who seldom rewards makes soldiers fight harder for distinction. A lover who withholds affection becomes more desired than the one who gives freely. Scarcity infects every realm of human behavior, shaping loyalty, desire, and obedience. To believe it neutral is to overlook its constant role as an invisible hand guiding the actions of men. Scarcity is also never neutral because it alters the future as much as the present. The man who endures scarcity by cunning emerges hardened and capable, while the one who falters is marked forever as weak. The nation that survives a famine with preparation becomes feared, while the one that collapses becomes prey. Scarcity creates permanent divisions between those who adapt and those who perish. Its consequences echo long after the immediate deprivation has passed, cementing new structures of dominance that remain for generations. Power has many faces, but none so deceptive, none so enduring as scarcity. It is the unseen chain that binds men, the silent weapon that divides friends, the invisible crown that crowns rulers. Scarcity is not merely about survival, it is about control, manipulation, and the unveiling of human weakness. It decides who commands and who obeys, who rises and who falls. And the most dangerous truth of all is that scarcity is often not discovered, but designed. Those who recognize its power learn to master it. Those who ignore it become its slaves. History belongs to the cunning few who understand that men are never driven by abundance, but by fear of loss, by hunger, by desperation. If you would see the world as it truly is, if you would learn the hidden levers that move men and empires, then you must not turn away from these darker truths. This is only the beginning. There are more secrets, more strategies, more hidden forces waiting to be uncovered. If you wish to arm yourself with such knowledge, if you wish never to be ruled blindly, then join me again. Subscribe and be ready for the next story of Power Unmasked.